Hey there YouTube, this is Mr. Budget. We're coming with a different video today. Don't know if you guys are going to like this. If you guys like more of this, I'll do more of these, but I just don't only play Vanguard, so I've been dabbling in other card games just for the fun of it, just trying to take a break from Vanguard before I go into the regionals. But if you guys saw by the thumbnail, this is a YuGiOh video-ish. So, for those who don't know, my first game was YuGiOh. Like most of us, but back in the day I used to play Volcanics, and recently they got a lot of new support, which has made the deck very cool, very updated, a little bit faster than it used to be. So I figured, why not dabble back into my past and figure out how the deck works and things like that. Come to find out, I really like the new strategy of it. It's for those who don't know, the term burn is where you deal your opponent life point damage by not attacking, just by effects. And that's what the whole basis of this deck is just to burn your opponent's life points down to 0. So, quick glance of what I've come up with, what I've had some friends in my community help me build towards. This is still a budget deck, don't get me wrong. These cards are very, very cheap. The most expensive card in this deck would be Volcanic Trooper, which I have not gotten my hands on yet due to internal situations, but I will eventually get that card, and then once I do get that card, this deck will be 100% complete. But I'm playing something that can fill the role or fill a niche spot in the deck until then. But besides that, I have every other card that I need for this deck. It is a battle trap variant of the deck where you kind of stun your opponent, slow them down to where you can burn them more, and then lock for game. So the whole point of this deck is to slow your opponent down with your traps, your abilities, your cards, and then burn until they can't stand it anymore. So, further ado, this is the Volcanic deck. So our first card is our boss monster, Volcanic Emperor. So for those who don't know, this is the new boss, level 8, 31 attack points, 3100 attack points, 24 defense points. Its effect states this card cannot be normal, summoned, or set. It must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 pyro monsters or a blaze accelerator card. We'll get to that later. And if it's special summoned this way, you burn your opponent for 500 life points for every pyro monster in your banish zone, and then you can set 1 volcanic trap. We'll get to that later. And the other effect of this card is whenever your opponent, if this card is on board and your opponent were to special summon from anywhere, you burn them for 500 points, 500 life points. So not only that you're burning for summoning, but you're also burning for your opponent for summoning. So this is an all-around good kind of soft floodgate to stop your opponent from rolling off until they deal with him. Our next big boss is our old boss, Volcanic Doomfire. So this was the original Volcanic boss monster that you would try to get out. A level 8, 3000, so he's a blue eyes with 18 defense. This card can also not be normal summon or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by tributing a Blaze Accelerator. We have cards in the deck that name themselves as that. And during the battle phase, all monsters on your opponent's side of the field that are in attack position must attack this monster. And then if he destroys a monster by battle, he then destroys every other monster your opponent controls, and then it burns them for 500 life points per monster he destroyed due to his effect. So this is a good battle trick to pop out when your opponent thinks they have game, and have it crash into this monster. If both get destroyed, all your opponent's monsters get destroyed. But there's another reason why we have him, because there is a Xyz monster that is a rank 8, and these are our 2 level 8s to go into that combo for another line of play that we can win the game. And I'll go into that line at the end of this video. Next, we play 3 copies of Volcanic Rocket, one of our starters. So Volcanic Rocket states if it is normal summon or special summon, you search your deck for a Blaze Accelerator card and add it to your hand. This is how you get the ball rolling, finding your spells. So he's a level 4, 1900 attack points, 1400 defense points. Those defense points do matter because there are other cards that can float into him when they're destroyed. Next, we play 3 copies of Royal Flame Sword Guard. So this card is what's holding the spot for Trooper, but he was also a key point in the previous Volcanic deck. So he's a level 4 Fire Pyro, 1700 attack points, 1200 defense points. Also a good thing that, again, is another card that you can search off of that floating ability we'll get into later in the profile. But his effect is when he is summoned, you can check for four pyro monsters in your graveyard. If you have all 4, shuffle them back in the deck and then draw 2 cards. So he's a walking pot of greed. Next, we play our level 3 Volcanic Counter at 2. So I've had a debate with many people about this card. I enjoy this card because it has won me many games. So for those who don't know, it's a level 3 Fire Pyro with 300 attack points and 13 defense points. Another card that can float. His effect is, if there is another pyro monster in your graveyard other than himself, when you take battle damage, your opponent takes the exact amount of battle damage that you took. So for example, if both players' life points are, let's say 6,000 life points, and I take 3,000 from a Blue Eyes, and I have 2 of these in my graveyard and I can proc them, they take a total of 3,000 2 times, which means they take a total of 6,000, which can end the game right then and there and give you the win. So most people don't know what this card does, and most people that do see it forget it's sitting in your graveyard, so they're not even worried about it. So when they do hit for that high number, you know that you can deal them twice as much. It's a funny way to win a game. So for our hand trap, we play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So Ash is fire, so it works with the fire archetype. So there are some cards that lock you into only using fire cards' abilities. So having the other hand traps may get locked out of them. But her effect is when your opponent would try to add a card from their deck, summon a monster from deck, or send a card to the graveyard from deck, you can pitch her to the graveyard, she resolves in the graveyard, and then you negate that effect for the rest of the turn. So she's a good way to stop your opponent from rolling on. There are a lot of decks that can play through that. Don't get you wrong, but playing her at a key point in the game could literally just shut down your opponent's turn. So she's a good card to have. You just got to know when to use her. Next, we play one of the cornerstones of our deck, 3 copies of Volcanic Scattershot. This is our Raigeki on demand. So Scattershot says when it is sent to the graveyard, no matter how it's sent to the graveyard, you deal your opponent 500 points of damage. But if it's sent to the graveyard by a Blaze Accelerator card, you can proc its other effect, which sends 2 more copies of itself from the deck or hand to the graveyard, and then destroy all your opponent's monsters that they have on the board, and then burn them for 500. So basically, if you do that effect in that way, you're going to burn for 15 and board wipe their monsters. So this is a Raigeki on command that burns. Our final volcanic monster we're playing is 3 copies of Volcanic Rimfire. So Rimfire has a similar effect to Scattershot, which says if this card is sent to the graveyard, no matter how you do, as long as it is sent to the graveyard, you can do one of 2 effects. You can banish itself to send another volcanic monster to the graveyard, or you can banish a Blaze Accelerator card that you have on board to face up set another Blaze Accelerator card from your deck. So it's basically you can swap out one accelerator for another, or banish itself to send another volcanic, which can set you up for further plays. So those are all the monsters. So next we're going to go into the spells. Okay, so we play 3 copies of the new Volcanic Blaze Accelerator. So this is a souped up version of the original Blaze Accelerator. So this card says you cannot activate this card unless you send the original Blaze Accelerator from your hand, face up on the field, or from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can do one of 2 effects. You can send a level 1 Pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard to target one monster in your opponent's board and destroy it, which can set up your Rimfire to go further, deeper into your deck. Or you can special summon 1 volcanic monster from your hand. So if you need to go into your extra deck for like a Link 2 or an Exceeds play, it can get you that extra summon to continue your plays. Most times you're going to use that first effect to destroy your opponent's monster so you can dig deeper in your deck, but if you're at a good position, you just need an extra summon, this is the way to go. Next, we play 3 copies of Fire Injection. So a lot of the new Volcanic cards have 2 effects. Fire Injection's effects are: you can either send 1 Volcanic monster to your graveyard and then burn your opponent's life points equal to 100 times the level of the monster you sent. So let's say you send Doomfire, you're going to burn for 800. Or you can give your opponent what's known as a bomb token, a level 1 Pyro fire type monster with 1000 attack and defense. And whenever that token is destroyed, you burn your opponent for 500 life points. So the idea is to give them a bomb token, destroy it with Accelerator, sending Rimfire to the graveyard to send Emperor to the graveyard, using Emperor's effect to banish the Blaze Accelerator to summon itself, and because there's a Rimfire in your banish zone, burn for another 5. So with all that happening, you're burning for 1000 and getting your boss monster out. So that is the idea, but I use it in another conjunction with another card, and it's a trap card, to kind of lock your opponent into not doing anything for a while until you're ready to set up. So I'll go into that play a little later. Next, we play 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. So this is a good going first and second card. Let's say, for example, you're going second, your opponent set up 5 negates, set up an entire board of monsters and things like that, and unless you use this card to stop them, you won't be able to play the game. So what Dark Ruler No More does is when it's activated, you turn off all of your opponent's monsters effects. They're basically just vanillas for the turn. They can't do anything. But the caveat to that is that your opponent cannot take any damage this turn. So is this really just for you to play, so you're able to play through their turn and get rid of their monsters for next turn so that you can start dealing more damage. This is a good way to just tell your opponent, no, I'm going to play the game, and you're not going to do anything. Next, we play 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. This is the way for us to get our spells and traps into the graveyard. So once per turn, you can activate this card, send 1 spell or trap card from your deck to the graveyard. There's a reason for that, because we have a few trap cards that can activate in the graveyard to do special things. So we actually need this card. Last but not, well, not last but not least, but second to last, we play 1 copy of Blaze Accelerator. This is the predecessor to Volcanic Blaze Accelerator. Its effect is you can send 1 Volcanic monster with 500 or less attack points from your hand to the graveyard to the target and destroy 1 card. It is not once per turn, so if you have more than enough of them, you can just keep popping off. But the caveat to this is once you do that, you cannot declare a battle phase. You cannot attack your opponent. And then the last spell we have is Call by the Grave. So this card is at 1, and it is very good because it can negate hand traps like Ash Blossom from going off, or pesky things from like your opponent trying to special summon monsters from the graveyard. You can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and then for the rest of the turn they cannot use card effects with the same name as that monster for the rest of the turn. So this basically just says no, stop, you're not doing that. So that's all the spells. Now we're going to go into the traps. Like I said before, this is a battle trap deck. So your traps are some of your bread and butters in this deck. So we play 1 Volcanic Inferno. Volcanic Inferno is one of the new traps, so it has roughly 2 different effects as well. Okay. Yeesh. A lot of talking. So what Volcanic Inferno does is that when your opponent monster activates an effect, you can flip this up and then send 1 Pyro monster and banish it. Burn your opponent for 500 life points. If the monster sent was a Volcanic monster, you negate the effect of that monster that was trying to activate its effect. And then at the end of the turn, you can choose 2 Volcanic monsters from either your banish zone or your graveyard and send them to the bottom of your deck. So this is a way for you to recur your monsters that are banished. Close the door. That are banished. That way you can keep rolling with your effects and not lose out on anything like your scatter shots. So it's a once per turn, but it's a good once per turn because it's a continuous trap, so you can keep doing it turn after turn after turn. Our other one of is the new card Volcanic Mission. So what this card does is when it's flipped up, you can do one of two things. You can either special summon one volcanic monster from your deck to the board, and then at the end of the turn, at the end of whoever's turn, return that monster to your hand. So this is a good way to get Doomfire out, to get Emperor out, to kind of slow roll your opponent. This is a good battle trick, that because when your opponent attacks in the battle phase and you have nothing on board, you can special summon Doomfire. Its effect will go off, forcing your opponent's monsters to attack it and then blow everything up on the board. Or if you need to roll into one of the lines of play that we're going to go to later, this is a good way to get Doomfire out outside of its normal summoning condition. The other effect is that you can target one fire monster on the board. If your opponent controls it, you burn your opponent's life points for equal to that monster's attack points. But if you control it, you burn for half of that monster's attack points to your opponent's life points. So just like we give bomb tokens, there's other cards in the volcanic archetype that can be summoned to your opponent's side of the board to give them damage. Or, for example, other fire monsters like Lava Golem and things like that, or the Fire Kaiju can be summoned to your opponent's side of the board to burn them for damage. Excuse me. The next trap we play is 3. This is the one of the bread and butter. This is Blaze Accelerator Reload. This is one of the cards that we will be sending to the graveyard with Foolish Burial Goods. So Reload on board counts yourself as try Blaze Accelerator. That way you can sacrifice it for Doomfire's summoning condition. But the other effect is once per turn you can send, during the main phase, any person's main phase, one volcanic monster to the graveyard to draw one card. Now the caveat to that is that if you send Scattershot, you can activate Scattershot's effect to blow your opponent's board up. Which means on their turn, if they're comboing off, getting a bunch of monsters on board, and you want them to stop, and you have a Scattershot in your hand, you can say no, send Chainlink 1, draw one card, Scattershot on a new chain, blow your opponent's board up, and then burn them for 15. Now, why would we send this to the graveyard? Because it has the effect in the graveyard. You can banish this card to send one volcanic monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can also send Scattershot to do the exact same effect because it's being sent by an accelerator card. Doesn't matter if it's on the board or in the graveyard. And the other idea is also scan your volcanic counter. That way you can set up your counter strike ability in the graveyard, so if they attack you with a high enough points, you can burn them for equal. That's where this card pivots and becomes very great. The other card that we can possibly send to the graveyard due to Foolish Burial Goods is Breakthrough Skill. I play it at 3. Only because I cannot afford Imperms, which Imperm is the better version of this card. So what Breakthrough Skill does is when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can flip this up and negate that monster's effect. Now, why are we sending it to the graveyard? Because he has the exact same effect in the graveyard. You can banish it to do the exact same thing, but not on the turn that it is sent. So you must keep that in mind. You must wait a turn until you send it to the graveyard. So it's a double trap card on board and in the graveyard. But I have found that this card has been very useful. But like I said before, the more expensive and more better version of the card will be Imperm, which allows you to completely stop a column from activating. And you can also do it from your hand if you don't control anything on the board. So it's a better hand trap and it's also a better trap. Now the last trap card I'm playing is Rivalry of Warlords. Now the reason why I'm talking about this card last at 3 is that its effect says each player can control no more than one type of monster. So at any given time, I'm only playing Pyros. There's no other type of monster in my deck besides Pyros. So this can, if your opponent's playing multiple of different type of monsters, this can lock them out of playing their other monsters. Now the reason why we go into this is because the idea is to play Fire Injection, give them the Pyro bomb token, and then activate on the next turn Rivalry of Warlords, which now locks them into Pyro. If they're not playing a Pyro deck, they can't summon anything until they get rid of they get rid of this token. which means it stuns lock them into an archetype that they're not playing, which means I have nothing but time to figure out a further strategy to stop them from progressing. That is the beauty of this card. Beauty of this little combination. This is a stun lock combination that if you get these cards in your hand, you can literally stop your opponent from playing for a few turns if they can't get rid of the token. Keep that in mind. So that's all the traps. I'm going to go into the side deck and then the extra deck. So for my side deck, it's not too much because again we're playing on a budget. I play 3 copies of Nibiru. So for those who don't know, Nibiru is a hand trap as well. If your opponent special summons or normal summons 5 times, you can activate Nibiru. Tribute all monsters on the board, even your own. Give them a token equal to the attack and defense of all monsters that were tributed, and you get to special summon Nibiru. Now the idea is that it stops your opponent from rolling, but you do give them a big token at the end of this effect, which you can get rid of with things like Scatter Shot or other effects that can pop your opponent's monsters, so leaving them with nothing. That is currently the idea. Then I also play a Board Breaker. I play 3 copies of Raigeki. Just in case our Scatter Shot doesn't go off, if you pull Raigeki, we can also wipe the opponent's monsters. I play 1 Harpy's Feather Duster because it's only at 1 that takes care of the back row. I play 2 copies of Golden Match. I do plan on bumping this up to 3 once I get the 3rd copy. So Golden Match is similar to Rivalry Warlords, where Warlords deal with types, Golden Match deals with attributes. So if you know your opponent's not playing any fire attributes, but they are playing other things, you can also do that same bomb token skill and lock them out of the attribute. So let's say they're playing in an all light deck, because they have a fire monster and they're locked in with Golden Match, they cannot summon any light monsters until they get rid of that fire monster. So this is another idea. This is another soft floodgate lock. I also play 2 copies of Spiritual Fire Art Kurenai. Kurenai I have seen kind of, this is why it's in the side because I haven't seen much use for it, but Kurenai can also win you games similar to Counter. For example, if your opponent's life points are below, let's say, 3,000, and you have an Emperor on board and you have a Kurenai also on board, you can set Kurenai, have your Emperor sit there, and then your opponent goes into their standby main, activate Kurenai, tribute your Emperor, and then burn them equal to the attack points of your Emperor, which is 31, which can also win you the game. So Kurenai does have its place, but it's in the side deck because it hasn't really shown up, but I'm also thinking about bumping this also up to 3, so when I switch out, I have a full set so I see it more often. And then the last one we're playing is something that's a bit of a hot take in the community right now. I play 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. This is a soft barrier. Well, it is a barrier. It stops your opponent from summoning any of the monsters that are either Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, or Exceeds monsters or Pendulum monsters for the turn. And any monsters that are on the board that shares that type of summoning archetype, their effects get locked. Their effects get negated for the turn. So basically, this just shuts down the turn. So this is another way for you to stop. So again, like I said, this is a very heavy battle trick trap deck. So you pretty much try to shut your opponent down from not doing anything, which gives you more breathing room to burn them later. So that is all of the side deck for right now. Again, we are playing on a budget. So for our extra deck, which we really don't go into, but we do have the options to, I play 1 copy of Celebrate Almirage. This is a way for us to get rid of our Rimfire if we are forced to summon it, and sending it to the graveyard to let it roll off into its other effects. But it also has the other effect that you can quick effect tribute this card, choose one of your monsters, and it cannot be destroyed by card effects. So let's say, for example, you have Emperor on the board, and your opponent, you don't want to lose Emperor to a spell or a trap card. Quick effect standby phase, send it to the graveyard. Emperor is now protected for the turn. So that's where this kind of plays into. Next, we play 1 copy of Heat of the Fire Charmer. So for her, this is a link rating of 2. You need 1 monster and 1 fire monster to summon her. She is a link rating 2 spellcaster with 1850. So, but what she does is when she's summoned, if your opponent has a fire monster in their graveyard, let's say for example Ash Blossom, which a lot of decks do run, she can take that Ash Blossom from the graveyard and summon it to your side of the field, which allows you to link climb higher into maybe a link 3 or link 4. But her other effect, which is very important to the deck, is that when she's destroyed by your opponent's effect or battle, by your opponent's monster, she can float into a fire monster with 1500 or less defense points. So our Rocket, our Firestorm Guard, our Volcanic Trooper, our Volcanic Counter, anything with 1500 or less defense points, she can float into and add it to your hand. So she's a way for you to dig deeper in your deck if you end up losing her. We also play one copy of IP Masquerade. This is a way for us to get into link climb a bit higher, into more of our board breakers and things like that, or any niche things on our opponent's turn. Still trying to figure out how to use her within this deck. Still trying to find a good link 3. Currently, I don't have a link 3 to go into to make her stronger, or a decent enough link 4. But we're just gonna leave her in here for right now, trying to figure it all out, because again, we're still learning, still figuring out the deck. And in terms of our link 4s that we have right now, I have Unchained Abomination. So this deck is based around destroying your opponent's things and burning them for them. So Abomination says during the main phase, outside of the battle calculation, if you destroy your opponent's monster by a card effect, he can then destroy another card. And then during the battle phase, if you destroy a monster by battle, he destroys another card. And then on the end turn, if you activated one of his other effects, he destroys another card. So in one turn, you can literally get rid of 3 cards for popping 1 card. So he's a good, just all-around destroyer. So, for example, because a lot of our cards only deal with the monsters, he can deal with the back row. And our last link 4 is Appaloosa. So if we're able to get her to her full potential, we have 4 negates in it on our opponent's next turn that we can use Appaloosa to just stop. So the idea is to use IP Masquerade in conjunction with 2 other monsters to go into her, because she does count the link ratings of the monsters used for her, and also the monsters. So having IP and 2 other monsters would give her her total of 4 negates. So again, we're just trying to find that level 3, that link 3, to kind of make it a lot easier to make her. But until then, if you guys have any ideas for the deck down below, let me know what I could run for that link 3 spot. I'm willing to take any advice I hope I can. I'm not trying to win and be the best. I'm just trying to be able to play the game. And in accordance with playing the game, a good friend of mine, shout out to Tyler at Illustrious Card and Games in Ford, New Jersey. He gave me this crazy rank 8 win con. So the idea of this is to use Doomfire and Emperor to go into number 97 Draglubia, and then its effect allows you to special summon 2 number dragon monsters from your extra deck. You summon one of them and then attach the other one as material. So number 100 Nubrian Dragon says that when it's summoned, you can attach one of its materials, and then it gains 1000 attack points equal to the number of rankings of all monsters on your board. So it's a rank 1, and number 97 is a rank 8. You're giving it 9,000 attack points. If you're able to clear your opponent's board, let's say for example with Scattershot, you can just swing for 9,000 in game. So if you have a way to if you find yourself in the position to go into this, you can literally end the game in 1 turn. Now, it's a niche thing to do, but it is crazy powerful, but you have to find the right opportunity to roll into it. And if you're able to, you're going to catch your opponent off guard. Because I don't think a lot of people see this happening all the time, but you can catch your opponent off guard and just blow them out of the water. Or in this case, blow them out of the fire. But do keep in mind, if you have Golden Match or Rival Warlords on board, you're locked out of this play, because until you or your opponent can deal with that trap card, you don't have a way to go in this because they're not fire type monsters or pyro monsters. Do keep that in mind. But that is the entirety of the deck that I have so far, and the strategies of the deck that I have come up with and my friends have helped me come up with. So we're going to shuffle the deck real quick and give you a test hand and show you what the deck can do, and just an all-around understanding of what plays that you might see going into your opening hands. So we're going to give the deck a little shuffle real quick. Let's put the extra deck down here. I know a lot of people are saying, well, you're playing a YuGiOh deck, but you have the Vanguard card season. I have to use what I can use, okay? Alright, so we give the deck a quick cut, and let's see what we get for our opening hand. So we have Rimfire. It's a bit of a... There it is. So we have Rimfire, Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, Scattershot, that's good, and Foolish Burial Goods. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to activate our Foolish Burial Goods, and if they don't ash us, we're going to send our Blaze Accelerator reload to the graveyard. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to activate our Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, which then forces us to send the original Blaze Accelerator from our deck to the graveyard. Okay. Right. Then we're going to normal summon our Volcanic Rimfire. And then using the effect of our Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, we're going to special summon another Rimfire. Then we're going to link 2 into our Heat of the Blaze Charmer, Ablaze. And then by sending 2 Rimfires, we can do keep in mind that Rimfire's effects are soft 1% just for those effects, so you can do one with one effect and the other effect with the other one. So we're going to banish 1 to then send a volcanic monster to the graveyard. We're going to send Volcanic Doomfire. And then with the other Rimfire, we are going to banish our Accelerator to then set a different Accelerator. We're going to face up set Blaze Accelerator reload. So now we have 1 on board and 1 in the graveyard, which is very important because now we're going to activate Volcanic Emporize effect to special summon itself by banishing a Blaze Accelerator. And then because there's a Rimfire in the bandit zone, we burn our opponent for 500, and then now we're allowed to set a Volcanic Trap. So we're going to set Volcanic Inferno because we also have that other Rimfire sitting there. So we're going to set this. So we already normal summoned, we special summoned twice. We have Emperor sitting tight as a soft floodgate, and then we also have Scattershot still in our hand. If our opponent goes too crazy, we can board wipe them. So this is kind of where you want to set up, so that way you know what your opponent, so you're pretty much ready for anything. So let's say, for example, that your opponent starts summoning a bunch of monsters on their main phase. Activate Accelerator, send Scattershot, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2. Resolving, Chainlink 2, sending 2 Scattershots for cost. Then destroy all face-up monsters that your opponent controls, burn them for 500, and then finishing off a Chainlink 1, which is Accelerator, draw 1 card. Give the deck a cut. Drawing 1 card, we get Rivalry of Warlords. And then on a new chain, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2 of the other 2 Scattershot, burn for 500 apiece. And then your opponent will, priority will go back to your opponent. They'll do something. Effect of Blaze Accelerator in the graveyard. Banish it. Send another Volcanic monster from your deck to the graveyard. In this case, we're going to send Volcanic Counter for later. Because there's now 4 pyros, 3 other pyros sitting in your graveyard, so Counter is live. So they find a way to deal with these 2 monsters. You're going to have Volcanic Counter as a backup security. And if they know what it does, they're probably not going to do much after that. And then, for example, let's say they do activate another monster effect, then I activate Volcanic Inferno, sending another pyro monster, burn them for 500 because it's a volcanic, negate that effect. And then at the end of the turn, I can send 2 more. I can send 2 pyro monsters from my banish or my graveyard to the bottom of my deck to reset for next turn. So that is the idea. And then most likely not, if they can play through it, they're going to play through it. If not, they're going to end the turn. So then we'll draw for our next turn. We get Ash Blossom. We set that Rivalry of Warlords down. So most likely we're going to, if we do activate it, we're most likely going to get rid of our Hita. So then we go to our battle phase. We attack with Hita. Then we attack with Emperor. And then we wait for our next turn. And then keep rolling from there. That is the idea. To keep stunning, to keep getting rid of their things, and stopping them from playing. And then just keep slamming and burning for turn. For game. Excuse me. So if you liked what you saw, if you have any suggestions down below, I know a lot of people are playing this deck with the FTK in idea. There's a lot of pieces that I don't own, I can't really afford, so I have to play what I can play with. So if you have any idea or way I can make this deck a lot better for cheaper, I am all ears. I love the community. I love hearing people's ideas. I love hearing the weird out of the box ideas that can literally just come out of nowhere and surprise the opponent and they don't know what to do. So if you have anything like that and you guys like what you saw, if you want more of other card games, deck profiles and things like that, please let me know in the comments down below. But I know I've been rambling for a little over 40 minutes, but it's a long deck, long combos and things like that to get behind the idea of. But if you guys like to see more of these, do let me know. And this has been Mr. Budget, always saying we will see you later.